I'm Mbweha. You can call me Ben of Team Relentless, and this is the Scrapyard, where you can come to learn how to make something for your Star Wars Legion collection. Today we're going to talk about how to make this balanced table that you see before me here, or that you can see part of for the time being. It's a feed-themed table, but you could take what you learn from this video and apply it to any tables that you choose to build. This is a balanced table. It is tournament ready. I've played on it. It's great. And when I say balanced, I mean it has a balance of big line of sight blocking buildings, scatter pieces, and area terrain pieces, about a third of each. Let's go ahead and get started right now and see how the table comes together. Alrighty, here we are about to set up the feed park table. This table is intended to be a balanced table, meaning that it's about a third of its terrain is big line of sight blocking pieces, about a third of its terrain is scatter, and about a third of its terrain is area terrain here, which you can see reflected in what's out here. About 30% of the board is taken up here, so this is a range 4 ruler. You can see that would be, if this was filled out all the way out to there, that would be a third of the board. Range 3 ruler would be 25%, so somewhere in between, but about 3.5 range rulers tends to be perfect. There's some little gaps here too, though, that are unaccounted for, but this ends up being about 30% of the table, with terrain about a third of the table. As I mentioned, about a third of it is big line of sight blocky stuff. A third of it is scatter, and a third of it is area terrain. Something that can be a little bit misleading when you're looking at this from this angle is that this might look like big line of sight blocking, but if we pick this up and we can see, actually you can see through it from most angles. It provides an interesting, having these capped on the top provides an interesting, sometimes things can hide inside from elevated firing positions, which there's a lot of on this map. Another thing to note is that these scatter pieces, these scatter hedges, are intentionally designed to be taller than a silhouette, so there's a lot of opportunity to hide behind those as well, depending on how you set up the map itself. Even this building here has holes in it. These 3D printed buildings, by the way, the 3D printed Naboo looking buildings are from Imperial Terrain. If you want to check that out, you can download the STLs and print them yourself, or I don't know if they sell these ones pre-printed, but they're called Marin City, like Marine without the E on the end. And yeah, so let's go ahead and put the table together, get it set up, and take a look at what it looks like to have Feed Park on the table. All right, now we've got the terrain for Feed Park all spread out across the table. As I placed the terrain, I was thinking about things like objectives, deployment zones, and firing lanes, which I'm going to quickly go over with you now, what those decisions I made were and why, and then we'll define the battlefield as if we were about to play. Again, this is meant to be a balanced table. It's a tournament-ready table. It's not going to give any particular type of list too great of an advantage. And the sides are fairly balanced as well. So it should be a good table to set up something like this for a tournament, or of course at home too. This is probably my favorite table to play on too, by the way. It's just, it looks great and it plays great. All right, so let's talk about objectives first. You always have to think about what is your key position going to be. Our key position, central piece of terrain, is this large piece of area terrain here. It's big enough that it can't be completely covered by an AAT or something like that, so makes it interesting. Not necessarily good or bad, but something to do on purpose. The other thing that we got to think about is intercept the transmissions, and where those points are. One point is here, one point is right underneath this tree right here, and then the other point is kind of hidden. I'm having trouble seeing it actually, but it's right over here somewhere. Actually, it might be underneath this fountain. I may move the fountain just a hair. These are the things that you have to watch for. So anyway, it's right over here. If it was underneath the fountain, then I would adjust the fountain a bit, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. In addition to that, you always need to think about payload, making sure there's not something that's too crazy for payload, which basically means there's nothing that is going to be devastating if someone can pick it on a short board edge. So and there's really not. You can see over here, there's a chance that on advanced positions that this could be selected, which could potentially be a problem. But this player on this side also has an answer to that. They could pick this hedge or that hedge there on advanced positions as well. So as long as it's equal, those would be really far payloads to go. To get your payload that far, but both players have it, so it would just be a long payload game, and that would be fine. Deployment zones. Most deployment zones, remember, you approach kind of from your long edge, the bottom right of your long edge towards the center. That's how most battles end up going. So this side would be going that way, and this side probably setting up here and going that way in most deployment zones. All of that is fine and fair and balanced. There's nothing that's too crazy about the way that that's set up. You got to think about things like disarray sometimes, where people can end up having, if there's absolutely nothing to block line of sight at all or hide at all on the short edges, that can be a problem for things like disarray. So we've got some things in the way there to make it interesting. And then hemmed in. If you were doing hemmed in on this side, you're going to have to, it could be a little bit uncomfortable here with the hedges, and then right here this could cause some problems, but not enough that I think that it wouldn't work. Like I said, I've played on this table set up like this, and it works great. And I think we even maybe played hemmed in, but I can't remember. The other thing to think about is the firing lanes. As always, you want to usually set things up so that they're going at a diagonal. It makes for more interesting games, more interactive games. You can see there's some big patches of open firing lanes right here. There are opportunities to try to get to cover, and there's some area terrain to use for that. But there are some sections where you could get caught out in the open, especially if someone has the high ground up here or is able to go up here. Then they're going to have a nice firing position, and that's fine. That's how that works. It's hard to see from the angle that you're at, but remember that you can go underneath these. That can be gone underneath. This piece over here can go underneath these. You can go underneath these. You can go underneath this. You can go underneath. So there's it's less movement restrictive than you might think, especially for small base troopers. Last but not least is thinking about, hey, could a tank get around? And yeah, when I played on this map, it was against a saber tank, and it can move through here just fine, and so could a Gav, and so could an AET, and everything else. So it's reasonable to have those big models out here. Oh, and last, I almost forgot. Keeping in mind that you always want to give people that have Jedi in their list not too much of an advantage to get to the center, but not a disadvantage to get to the center either. So these hedges, again, it might be hard to see from this angle, but these two hedges and these two hedges are tall enough to be line of sight blockers. And so you can hide, Luke Skywalker right here, and then it can jump out. So that would be, a little more than range 1 away from that center point. There's nowhere to hide at range 1 from the very center, totally unviewable, because that tends to create some balance issues. But they can hide back here, here, and jump out eventually. So there is a little bit of space to hide, but it's not too much. Ooh, there's a barky dog today, and that's okay. I'm gonna be right back. Alrighty, doggy taken care of. As I was saying, these tall hedges make for good approaches for things that need to stay hidden, but they're not an overpowered approach. It's not too close to the center. They also look like they might be pretty wide, but you really, with silhouettes, can really only fit 2 models behind it safely, and it pretty quickly you can get to a firing angle where where my finger is over here, where it could be seen from this direction. So it's a little deceptive how you can hide behind it, and you can definitely hide like 1 Jedi behind it, but you can't hide a bunch of stuff behind it, which is how it should be. So that was my thinking for laying out the game board. It's fair, it's balanced, it's great. Let's pretend that we were defining the battlefield just to make sure we're all on the same page with kind of what these terrain pieces do. Anything that's a building we would call heavy. Everything else we would call light. The area terrain pieces are intended to not be difficult movement at all, and they're pretty tall on purpose. They would give it's supposed to be a park, so it's big tall trees. They would give their cover to most things when you set them out, probably just like an ATSD wouldn't get cover. But again, we'd have to put those models out, which we're not going to do right now, and that's fine. The hedges are light cover. They're difficult to go over. We should recommend and agree in advance whether or not models can stop on the hedges or not. You can balance a small base mini on it, but you would want to talk about that with your opponent. I personally think that's fine. You could clamber up and be on top of the hedge I don't know, maybe if that feels like that's too silly, then don't do that. Then don't allow people to climb around the top. Treat it like a wall where you'd have to go all the way over with a double clamber, as I believe how that would work, or thinking about how you want it to interact with scale. Same for getting up on top of all these other things. Most of this is height 1, so thinking about a speeder can't go right over this, a speeder bike. This is intentionally pretty tall, so this is for Mandos to go up there. This is also intentionally a height 2 thing over here, but this is height 1, and this is height 1, and then this is height 2. So they can create a fun situation where, when I played this game, I had Bosk start over here, and he came up here and scaled over, and then and later he moved again, he moved up here and scaled over. So can have fun with the different varied terrain levels for that. That's pretty much that. It's a pretty simple table. There's really only 3 types. Oh, one last note. We run this piece here as area terrain at our table, because it can, if you want each bench to be separate, it can create a lot of issues with, I'm touching this bench, and but I don't get to ignore, you hiding at this bench. Seems a little silly. They're really close to each other. They're really low benches. So we just consider this whole thing to be area terrain. It's only tall enough to really give its cover to like Droideka and shorter. That way, there's intentionally, I didn't put this back here. Like if you're touching the bench, you're going to be touching all of it pretty much, and it would be difficult to cut across it or in any way. So that's how we like to run that piece there. Oh, one other note. You want to talk about the stairs with your opponent. If say Bosk is up here and shooting down, or someone wants to shoot up, if they're touching this part of the building, should Bosk no longer have cover? That seems a little silly. So we played the stairs and the like mud piles to get to places. This one detaches, the other one doesn't. We play those stairs and those mud as separate terrain pieces from the buildings themselves. We also consider this to be one terrain piece, and then this to be another, for example, too. So this is one piece, and then this is one piece, to subdivide it a little bit. So that's this table. I hope that you have found this inspiring and interesting, and it's a balance table, and learned some things about how to set up a nice balance table for Star Wars Legion. I'm Mbweha. You can call me Ben of Team Relentless, and this has been the Scrapyard.